full of muscle can't stop me. Hey,
One.
come on.
Fight.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Swindler Podcast. Episode 2. Hangman, introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, my name is Hangmankid. I'm here, your co-host on this great, wonderful day. And I'm an Australian King player.
True, I'm an Australian Steve player. It's going to be a really, really exciting one today because we've got a very special guest who I'm going to introduce in just a moment. But before we get into that, I just wanted to let you guys all know about a little event that's happening here in Victoria just next week. And that is going to be none other than TGX, the Game Expo. If you guys aren't signed up, please sign up. I'm going to be signed up. Hangman should hopefully be signed up. Are you signed up?
Potentially, we'll have to see
Potentially.
by my schedule. But for people signing up, you will have to buy the pass for the weekend pass for Saturday and Sunday. The tournament will be played in 2 days. Top 8 will be on Sunday. So if you are expecting to, go deep in the tournament and win it all, you will have to show up for both days.
Yeah, for sure. But make sure you do. There's going to be some big prizes. Got a $7,000 total prize pool for the FGC games. I believe that equals out to above $1,000 for Tekken. So be sure to sign up. Come join us. Hangman, I'm really upset if you don't come. You see Unveiled in the stream. He's going to be super upset if you don't come. So make sure you guys show up, sign up. Let's do this. And before we go to our second event, we wanted to introduce today's guest. We finally have guests here on the podcast. You might see him from the banner there, but we've got PunLife. For those of you who don't know, PunLife is an exceptional commentator from Europe, currently residing in the UK. He's been doing commentary for a good long while now. I became a huge fan of him through his Tekken 7 commentary. You might also know him from his statistical work in the realm of competitive Tekken. He's compiled some of the statistical data from many different tournaments over the years, and really gives a unique spin on meta conversation, who's the best, what's the best, who's being used, and all around just a fantastic bloke. Hangman and I have had the honor to be able to chat with him for a few minutes before we've gotten started. It was also apparently his birthday yesterday, so please, happy birthdays in the chat. But PunLife, welcome along, dude.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm PunLife. I'm not Australian, as you can tell. I'm actually Polish, and like Poultry said, I reside in UK and have done for a while now, I think. So yeah, no, happy to be here. It's too early in UK, but not early enough to be particularly groggy. So excited to just yap for the next
That's it.
extended period of time.
That's what we want to do. We're here to yap. And speaking of yapping, this is going to be somewhat foreign to our local chatters. We've got Grateo asking in the chat, Polish? Question mark?
Yes, I am indeed.
There you go.
Dzień dobry to any Polish chatters in there.
Shout out the Polish chatters. Are you sure he's not Indonesian? I think you're confusing him for Hangman, the other guy on the pod.
That's me.
We did want to do a quick shout out to this event, Edinburgh. This was one that PunLife recommended. PunLife, what can you tell me about Edinburgh?
Listen, so the thing about UK communities, there's a fair few of them, is that they're all dedicated, but none are as dedicated as the Scottish community to Tekken. They are an amazing bunch of people. Edinburgh is an amazing city as well. I got the pleasure to be there fairly recently, just in the last year. They are organizing another flagship event and running a bunch of games. I think right now they're running like 7 games or something there. Of course, Tekken 8 is on the cards there as well. But yeah, great community, great people, great food. Really nice city to be in as well. So it's one to be a part of. If you're in UK or if you're in Europe at all, there's plenty of flights and accessible transport in the city. So make sure you get down and support. They've been always doing a massive effort to advertise and usually doing a pretty good job of it. The tournament in Glasgow last year, Neutral Mania, was the biggest dojo that was part of the EU Cup. So they are grinding out there. So we gotta go out and support them.
Yeah, Neutral Mania was a huge deal. Definitely take a look at this one. They're gonna have streams. They're gonna have multiple different events as well. As we can see, we got Street Fighter, we got Tekken, we got Grand Blue, Vampire Savior, the whole kit.
I've noticed Vampire Survivor is pretty popular in this event. A lot of people are signing up. So that's very interesting to
It's a
me.
good game.
Mm.
I've never actually played it. Never actually played it, but it's definitely high up on the list. So be sure to take a look at Edinburgh. That's coming up soon. But yeah, we've got PunLife in the building today. For those of you who don't know him, once again, commentary extraordinaire, winner of Wasteman Weekly's 464, if you didn't know. Walking home with a massive 28 pounds and 80 pence. So you know that he's legit. No, jokes aside, welcome PunLife. And we wanted to get straight into it by talking about commentary. Now, you've been in the scene for quite a while. So maybe walk us through what getting into the FGC was like for you, and then we'll slowly transition that into being on the mic at some of the most prestigious events in EU.
Of course, right. So I'm gonna do the classic spiel of, oh yeah, I've played Tekken since Tekken 2 since I was a child, which is technically true, right? Like I used to bang it out with my dad. Which good
Real.
times. He'd get washed nowadays, but back then he had the tech, and now he's absolutely washed. But I mentioned to both of you off pod that I started getting conscious about fighting games when I was probably like 11, 12, 13 kind of age, and that was the age where I didn't have a console, so I didn't have a PS3 or Xbox. I had a PS2, and then I went straight back to PC. And around those times, so the 2010s, there wasn't really any fighting games on PC.
Right.
So like you had a choice, Street Fighter 4, Blaze Blue, Calamity Trigger, maybe MK9. And I didn't like MK.
Mhm.
I was too bad at Street Fighter, so I
Fair.
settled for Blaze Blue because it looked cool and it was anime as hell, right?
Mhm.
So played for a bunch of Blaze Blue, and I guess Guilty Gear Xrd when that came out as well. Played for a bunch of that. Didn't know what locals were. Didn't know locals existed.
Mhm.
And eventually, not many years, but maybe like 5 or 6 years later, I was at university and I saw this weird announcement like, "Oh, Tekken 7 is coming." And it's like, "Oh shit, Tekken!"
Yep.
I played this so much when I was a kid, and I noticed it was coming to PC, so I was like, "Well, instant pre-order." And started playing Tekken 7 on release. I had an exam on Monday. Tekken 7 came out on Friday, in early 2017.
Unlucky.
That's a ancient meme for those that did not start in Tekken 7. And by the time the exam rolled around, I had about 26 hours into the game.
Oof.
2 days, 26 hours. It was great.
Tough, man.
I aced the exam, so it's fine. It's fine. Listen, it worked out fine.
Worked out fine.
Yeah, so played for that, played for a few months, have like terrible clips of me like getting my first perfect and popping off
That's
on stream
awesome, dude.
back then.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
It's listen, was watching that back and like knowing the things I do now, it's
Oh,
so funny just going back to it.
That's funny as dude.
And a few months later, because I had to move back to my parents because I was on an internship because that was just the end of my second year of uni.
Right.
I started playing ranked, which we all remember what a blessing Tekken 7 ranked was in season 1.
Ooh, boy.
But I was playing alongside with a Xiaoyu player, and I think it was going well. Like I don't remember the exact scores. I think it was going back and forth. Infinite rematch was a fun thing back then. But what happened is the glorious Tekken 7 netcode decided to stop working, and the game disconnected. I was like, oh damn, it feels really bad. I was really enjoying playing this guy, and I messaged him, and he was like, oh, I see that you're in Stratford from your Steam profile. You should come down to locals. So a few weeks later, I went down to locals, and now I'm here.
That's sweet.
7 years later, 8 years later. So
the ranked
netcode.
Yeah, the Tekken 7 ranked to offline's pipeline is real as hell, because that's pretty much what happened to me. I also played Tekken as a kid with my dad and my brother. My younger brother and I had this belief that in Tekken 3, if you got the Eddie Gordo preset, where he's wearing his purple shirt, and he's got his shoes on, you did more damage because he had shoes on. And I think the reason why we believe that is because if you had the shoes on, you were P1 or some shit like that. It was just easier to play. And the exact same thing happened. I didn't play Tekken throughout my childhood, just when I was really young. Get to Tekken 7. At this point, I'm pretty interested in watching Super Smash Bros. Melee competitively. It was a game I also loved as a kid. And one day, this set appears in my feed, and it's Knee versus JDCR at Rev Major, Losers Finals. One of the most
Classic.
iconic sets ever played. Absolute classic, absolute classic. And it was Dragunov for JDCR, and then Feng and Steve for Knee. And immediately my ears had perked up because holy shit, there's a Tekken 7. We've come that far. I remember playing Tekken 3. I remember Eddie Gordo. And I was amazed because at this point I'd gotten a little bit of a taste for what competitive movement looks like in a video game. Like prior to Melee, I hadn't really explored esports or anything like that. And dude, watching these characters in action, moving around the screen at light speed with some of the most well-animated moves I'd ever seen in a game. Like watching Dragunov wall running 2 or Feng doing his attacks from Kenpo or Steve landing a counter hit back 1. It was like, all right, it's time. Played the game for a bit. I was playing Kazumi. One day, grinding ranked, I run into someone who is now a dear friend of mine. Shout out Pip, another Kazumi player. And they messaged me on Steam. They're like, hey, you Victoria? It's like, yeah. You know there's locals? No? Well, go to this local on Saturday. And that kickstarted it. So it's cool to see the parallels with your own story, where the Tekken 7 ranked pipeline actually can do wonders if you let it. You just need to be willing to stick it out. What's your story, Hangman? How did you get into Tekken?
Well, I just moved into Melbourne, right? And then I've been working, and I didn't really have any friends. So I met Hundo randomly at an anime watching club. Very random. And I asked him, hey, like, what do you do outside of this? And he said, oh, I play Tekken. And I'm like, what? Tekken? I haven't seen that in ages as well. Probably same like you, you know?
Yeah,
And then
real.
he said, yeah, offline with people. I'm like, what the hell? People meet up offline to play video games? Tekken? So I showed up, and I showed up for the very first offline that I did. It was a CCH.
Yes.
I didn't even have a
Classic.
copy of the game. I was so afraid that everyone was going to be super crack and whatnot, you know?
Mhm.
And then I visited the first ever locals, and honestly, I've never felt more like surrounded by people that are just like me.
Yeah.
And I've been there since.
Yeah.
There you go. And that was 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Who knows now?
Oh my god, I have to interrupt this line of thought, but it's the GOAT in the chat, Wildo.
Oh, there you go.
I need to plug the story real quick because this guy is special to me, dude. Wildo is an absolute legend in the Scottish Tekken scene. We just had PunLife just gave us the rundown for Edinburgh, which is coming up. Edinburgh 4, don't forget, it's coming up. I'm putting it back on the screen just so that you guys know. Yeah, Wildo, absolute legend from the Scottish Tekken community. Used to be a frequencer of the Kazumi Discord. One of the nicest people in the scene. So if you're going to watch this event for any one reason, go check out his Jin because he's cracked. He's absolutely cracked. But yeah, back to old mate PunLife. You've now since since the humble days of Tekken 7 ranked and losing your mind at perfect, have become like pretty compelling force in European commentary. How did that get started?
Well, also by accident. So, I mean, I guess to give a bit of backstory. When I was at university, I used to stream a lot. And I would be streaming to like absolutely no one, right? I would just be streaming League of Legends all day because I basically did not turn up to majority of my lectures, at least not until I got into final year, and I was just doing stuff I like because I got to pick my units in final year. So when I picked my units, I was like, well, I actually like all this stuff, so I'll turn up. But before that, I was like, well, I'll turn up to like the first 3 weeks, and then I'll only go to the units I actually enjoy, and everything else I'll just do at home, like whatever. which worked out super well actually. I wouldn't recommend this to everyone, but if you got a work ethic, it actually works out really well. So I stream a lot, which meant I got quite comfortable just yapping to the camera at all times, even there's no one there to listen, right? Which sounds a little sad in retrospect, but hey, it worked out well. So we had, when I was part of East London Fighters, so that was my local scene in London, we had an event that we do once a year called the Royal Rumble, which very much follows the kind of wrestling format where you have 2 players enter, and then whenever someone loses, another person enters, and it keeps going until you get to the 30th person, and there's one person left standing. So our commentators at the time, Eternal Dragon and Abominable, both exceptional talent as well. They had to go home because it was getting late. Trains, stopped running eventually. They lived outside of London, so they had to get back. And the founder of Elf, Vern, was like, "Oh well, would you like to hop on the mic?" So me and Gossain hop on the mic. Gossain also a legend in his own right?
What a start.
Yeah, so hop on. We do the end of the Rumble. It was a fun experience, and then after that, we had like a WhatsApp chat for the community, and Vern and others were like, "Oh, you got a good voice for commentary. It was pleasant to listen to." And I was like, "Cool, yeah, I guess I'll do that more often."
Nice.
And I did. So it kind of started, just like hopping on the mic for the scene, for my local scene to support. Just being another way of supporting. Around the time I started hopping on the mic, I also started actually doing the admin and TOing in the scene. It's funny because at the time I was trying to make like Elf had like a little competitive team. We had a somewhat flaky sponsor, but we had a sponsor. And so I was like, oh, I really want to make this team, right? Like I've gotten a lot better. I've dropped Horang and picked up Claudio. There's no one else played a character in the scene, so I was like, you know what? Like, I'll play this character. Like I'll get better and teach people, etc. And somehow instead of the competitive team, I made the admin team, which I don't know if that's a mission failed successfully or what, but got on that, and then just started commentating for a while, and eventually, I guess so. This would have been the start of 2018, so the just before season 2 started.
Yes.
Started doing more events here and there. Continued learning from Abominable and Eternal Dragon and others. And I think around 2019, was it 2019? 2019, I started getting a few more events. It was still mainly like Elf events and stuff.
Yeah.
But we were doing a lot more online events. So we had the Thursday night tournaments or Thursday night TNT tournaments. We did those for like, I think I would have I was effectively like the anchor of the show, and we would have another commentator every week. And that was an insane exercise, which I now realize in retrospect. Commentating with a different person every week meant I had to get really good at adjusting to people and trying to figure things out, especially when you're doing it online, you have latency and stuff that makes it a little bit more difficult. So that was like a really good learning experience for those 2 years that we were running it.
Fair enough.
And then COVID happened, which obviously wasn't fun, but we used to run a bunch of events during COVID. We had like a lockdown league, and we did invitationals, and we did like beginner tournaments and all kinds of things. And I think I got IESF, so I did like a North American qualifier or something.
Yep.
Or maybe South American qualifier. It might be South American qualifier actually. Did that with a Welsh legend Bebop, and came back after COVID, and I managed to get ESF. So that was like the first flagship event I ever got. That was the TWT Master. It was a massive honor, and I think at this point I also would have done ICFC a few times, which is how I got BSF, because once you go to ICFC, it was a bit easier to get your name out there, and the guys producing it would help you, like get to Namco and advertise you and sell you to them in that sense. So that was like the breaking point, I think. Which was good. It was a good experience. Like, doing this journey and getting to the master event was like, it felt like I made it now moment. I'm on the world tour.
Yeah, for real.
After all these years.
Yeah, I'm looking at your record. You've done very well as a commentator. Last year you did one Masters event versus fighting, right? That's the one you're talking about?
Yes.
And you did 2 challenger events, Brussels and Ultimate Fighting Arena, right? And I think Brownman's also in that one, Poultry, I think.
Yes.
I think he's also in Ultimate Fighting, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So that's really amazing. People really want to do people struggle just to get to the level of where you are, because I know breaking into the TWT commentator rotation is incredibly difficult, because there's personalities that we all love, that everybody knows from years and years of them being broadcasted in TWT tournaments, right? I'm talking about the Markman, the Tasty Steve, these kinds of guys, and they already will continue to be featured a lot in these tours. So I think for somebody new like yourself, and also for Potch Spice and for Brownman, coming new to the circuit, it's a major achievement. So well done.
Yeah, it's huge.
Thank you.
It's huge.
It's
Yeah, go.
I was gonna say it's a tough one, right? So I'm gonna be as honest here as possible without trying to ruin my career here. There is the big issue I have specifically with this kind of like, let's call it a talent pipeline, right? So in majority of esports, you have almost a way, like a clear-cut way of, you do these kind of events, you do this tier of event, and then you end up slowly like showing off that you're capable and you're able to go to the upper echelon. So be it in League, be it in, I don't know, like Overwatch, etc. Like I've commentary friends, actually people in the IRL that worked like the highest level of Overwatch.
Yeah.
My partner used to work in esports, etc. So we have mutual friends and things. Tekken doesn't really have that. There isn't a clear-cut pathway of, oh, you do some locals, you do this, and then suddenly you're on TWT. It doesn't work like that. It hasn't worked like that since the start of 7, as far as I could tell. Or maybe even before that. Like, obviously, I wasn't around before those times, so it's hard to tell. But there isn't a clear-cut pathway, and it's very difficult to track your progress.
Yeah.
So the thing I left out when I mentioned that I got VSF in 2022, right, is the year after. So when I got VSF 2022, I thought, oh, this is my big break. Like, I've made it onto the tour, so surely now there's going to be more opportunities. It's going to be a bit more easier to make a more recurring thing, and it'll be fun to just, to do more stuff. That didn't happen. So next year came around, 2023, and I had 0 masters, 0 challengers. I tried to apply to stuff. I didn't get in. And it was heartbreaking. It was like, I got my hopes up, right? Like, I was like, oh, now it's my opportunity, it's my time to slowly start building up and, work towards that dream of making TWT finals. And that just didn't happen. It was a really rough year. Like, from that perspective, mentally, it felt absolutely awful. And that's entirely me for getting my expectations up. But it was a harsh reality check. And you kind of had to deal with that.
Yeah.
Even like looking at 2024, right? Like, it was a massively successful year for me as a commentator. Getting to do VSF again, getting to do UFA was an incredible experience, and the biggest my biggest regret about the event is not getting to commentate with Brandman, because we were absolutely shooting the shit outside of commentary, and it was super fun. But even like looking at that year, Brussels and UFA, I think what really helped is that Damascus, right? He's also a legendary commentator. He pays a lot of attention to the commentary process, and I'm pretty sure he worked with the commentary process on both events. And he knows myself and Regzu and Chicken Chakra, etc. We've all been doing our best to do as many events as possible, online or otherwise. So he recognized that and gave us a shot, which was incredibly kind of him. But for TWT tournaments, for like master events, the highest of the high events, there isn't really a way to apply, in a sense. Like, you get picked.
Yeah.
And like you said, the scene is stacked. There's so much talent from all over the globe. You have all the Old American Law. You have Spag. You have Bubsy. You have Rukang now as well. That's shifted into commentary a lot more. There's a lot of people that have been around for a long time, and it's difficult to break into because there isn't that pipeline. And to some degree, I know some casters are very like, if you train up someone that could potentially replace you, you're hindering your career chances in a sense. And some people are scared of that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anyone specifically that I mentioned this, but it's a thing that has existed every time. Like, people pull up the ladder. It's just a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've been lucky enough that a lot of people have actually been super kind, you know, Spag, Bubsy, etc. And always try to push me on and encourage me to just keep going. But it is hard to like continue making it. I think last year I got lucky because of the Esports World Cup.
Yeah.
I think
yes.
I wasn't on the shortlist for VSF because I think that went out like earlier in the year, and I know I wasn't on it because I didn't get any emails, right? No one messaged the business email punlife@punlife.co.uk. That's a plug.
Shout out.
Plug, shout out.
But no one emailed me, so I was like, well, I guess I didn't get it. And then EWC came around, and people realized, oh, they do want to do EWC because it's obviously a major event, and so I think they ended up dropping out the VSF commentary, which freed up some spots, which is how I got in. So this year, to avoid previous downfalls in my psyche, I'm going in with a more like, you know, it'll be nice to get these events again, but it's not guaranteed. I got to keep improving. I got to keep working on my commentary and what makes me unique, and just hopefully, you know, sell myself as much as possible, talk to people, get my name out there as much as possible. And if I get events, then I get events. If I don't, it's not the end of the world. It's not going to stop me. But it's the kind of mindset you got to keep around these things.
Yeah, I actually want to highlight something that you mentioned. We don't really, when I watch these podcasts about people, and generally just Tekken dialogue on Twitter and everywhere else, right? We don't really talk about commentating a lot, which obviously would make sense. We'll talk about the game, right? So I think what you're saying here is like a pretty rare stuff that's not really spoken about except behind closed doors, right? Or within people that are interested. But what you're saying is correct, because there is no talent search in the TWT. Bandai Namco, or I guess you must be dealing directly with Tenno, right? That's my guess. For commentary spots, I'm not too sure, but you know, we don't really have any talent searching in the TWT. There's actually no clear pathway, like you mentioned, for somebody, someone who's commentating local majors, who's grinding out commentary somewhere, online tournaments, right? There's no clear pathway to get criticism and potentially get a trial or a shot at a TWT challenger. Or actually, I'm not sure. I think majors are assigned. I think commentators for majors assigned. My PunLife can correct me on this. But I think challenger events gets to pick their own commentators, if I'm correct. Right?
That is correct. Yeah,
that's right.
Challengers usually have their own application process. So like Brussels, I applied to last year. UFA, I applied to last year. Or Masters usually so let's say Combo Breaker. They have an application form, but I'm pretty sure for Tekken they don't use the results of the application form. They do just the production company. So in this case, Tenno, like you mentioned, since they are handling the broadcast, they will handle sourcing the talent. And to be fair, that's just a general esports way of life, where the publishers provide the budget, the production company handles everything else around that, being from equipment to commentary, etc.
Yeah, I think it is a very difficult process, like you said, because there's really no incentive for them to talent search, perhaps, unless they have that inner drive to, we want to up our commentary experience, right? Something like that, which doesn't seem like it's on the agenda. And I'm just trying to read between the lines on what you said as well, which is this year you're kind of having your fingers crossed right now, which means that you don't know your allocation for this year. I don't know if that's something you can say or not, because from my understanding, they release I guess they probably will have to announce all the events when the next TWT season comes out, and then from my understanding, they'll contact all of the major commentators that they want in an email, maybe, and to confirm and lock in, like, okay, here's our commentators rotation for this year, and these guys get this event and this guy get these events. So you're probably hoping for something like that to happen when the season rolls on, right?
Yeah. So I think those things are done. I hard to say how early they are done ahead of the season, but probably like a month or so before the season starts. There's probably already going to be mostly preliminary contracts and such will be sorted out. Again, I've never actually got an allocation ahead of the season, so anything I would have gotten would have been through like either challenger event or applications, or something coming in later in the pipeline because someone dropped out or there was a space or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, that's the kind of process that goes into it. And to play the devil's advocate, right? part of the commentary. So obviously, part of the commentary itself, the big part is just yapping and chatting shit on the mic. We can all agree on that one. But another big part of the commentary is having a brand, right? And this is an area I definitely suffer in because I actually just don't care about social media that much. When you're a commentator, you are a recognizable brand. There are people that will tune into events just to hear their favorite commentator talk about a game they like. And that brings viewers, that brings an audience to the commentary, and it's an extension of the broadcast, right? Because you tune in to see some Tekken, and the commentary is meant to be an addition on top of that. It's meant to add to the broadcast, not just describe what's on screen by itself. So that's a big thing of it. And when you have a brand that's been recognizable for a while, Tasty Steve, massive commentator. Everyone in GFD knows him, right? You don't want to lose a person like that because they are an incredible asset. They've been around for many years, so they are very capable. They are very adaptable. They are incredibly flexible and can go around different games. Same as Spike. He's the most well-known EU commentator and probably one of the most well-known commentators outside of the US commentators. So I can definitely see the thought process of, we want the people that will be the most recognizable, the most liked, etc. on the broadcast, because it makes it easier for the production company to not have to deal with any complaints of who's this guy, or new talent if they've not proven themselves and they mess up on broadcast. Sometimes they want to know how to deal with it, and then the production company has to take the blame for that afterwards because they've messed up. So there's a lot to it. I can see the thought process, and I can see the risk mitigation almost of that aspect. Right? But there's always the conversation of you try to give the talent as much opportunity to prove themselves, be it in pools or, like you said, like challenger events, etc., and then build them up and coach them. But there isn't, outside of contacting someone yourself to try to get tips or VOD reviews or whatever, which I know people do, and I have done that in the past, and I've done it for younger commentators as well in the past myself. It's hard to grow, absolutely difficult to grow.
That's pretty much it, right? And the people that are featured continue to use that opportunity to continue to build their brand, so it's a snowball effect, right? I do have a crackpot theory here. I don't know if you would entertain me, right? I've noticed the people who are also getting TWT spots, the big time commentators, generally also have a lot of influence in terms of events. Some of these guys on the commentary rotations, they're not just commentators. Some of them are event runners, or they have a big hand in helping organizations that help produce events. You know what I mean? Do you think that's actually also influencing if they would choose someone to be a commentator, or people in those positions are actually best to market themselves because they deal directly with Tenno because of those events connection?
I mean, hard to say, but it's probably a mix of factors, right? So someone that's able to wear multiple hats is valuable, right? Because it's easier to deal with just paying one person two separate rates for two different duties than having to employ two separate people and then do all the documentation and other stuff and work out all that jazz. It's just from a paperwork perspective. It also usually means if you're doing multiple things like that, then again, your brand is recognizable. You've done things. You're known for the things you do, and if you've already proven yourself in two separate categories, then that's just a bonus. It's same as me doing data stuff and commentary, right? So I've done commentary stuff, and now I'm proving myself in data stuff. So I think there's definitely a factor to that potentially being. Well, it's never going to be not beneficial to the career, I suppose.
Yeah. I got one last question for you, a fun one for the commentary section of your time, I suppose. When you're at the Masters event, did they give you a list of things not to do? For example, you can't mention other food products except for Chipotle or something like that. Is there any funny ones that you can say, if you remember or recall any?
So it's pretty. I'll put it like this. Yes, there is a list. There's always a list of these are the advertisements you have to read. These are things not to do. There's a clothing guideline, for example. But this isn't just a Tekken thing or specific to fighting games, this is pretty standard. So usually you get like some kind of a brief that tells you obviously what's happening. You get a run of show, which is a list of all the things happening on the show. When you go into roughly the times when you go into ad breaks and etc. How many matches you're expecting on stream, all that kind of stuff. So it is meant to help you prepare and be aware of what's happening in the broadcast and the flow of broadcast, so you don't get blindsided by anything. And I mean, most commentators should be able to react, but it still makes it easier to know what's happening. It gives you time to prepare, get some segues going, etc. But yes, you are. This is pretty common practice. You are generally not meant to talk about sponsors that may be competition to the sponsor that is on your event. So I think I'm allowed to say it. Yeah, you were not meant to talk about other like food brands or whatever. But I feel like that's pretty commonplace. If you have a sponsor that, like, if you have a car sponsor, you're not gonna suddenly start bringing up another car or mentioning them.
Yeah, of course. Oh, check out my Toyota.
Just watching PunLife get shot for referencing like Head Show in Mexico when he's meant to be talking about Chipotle. It's just like, nah, dude, it's not happening.
It's a thing to be aware of, but yeah, it's fair. It's not too unusual. Let's put it up. Our events and esports always have that as well.
No, that makes sense.
That's good. Very insightful.
Yeah, I wanted to quickly circle back around to what you were mentioning earlier. You kind of had a trial by fire doing a bunch of events a little earlier on into your, I guess, commentary path. And you mentioned the one of the difficulties was when you're on a consistent rotation of commentary from week to week, you're getting paired up with tons of different personalities and different philosophies about the game and different approaches to talking about the game and different levels of care, I suppose, with how information is conveyed. And you've got your hype men and you've got your analytical types. What was it like, I suppose, learning to actually pair up with other commentators and to be able to put on a good show regardless of who you were sitting next to? And I suppose, as like a second side question, are there ever instances where it feels a little bit hopeless? And in those spots, what are you trying to do to kind of carry the show, I suppose?
So, a good question. Very good question. It is, so the technique I developed, say technique. When I'm commentating with someone I don't know, be it offline or online, what I tend to do is I try to get like 30 minutes of their time before the broadcast. And I just talk to them. I try to feel out their energy. Are they a loud person? Are they outspoken? Are they a bit in their shell? It gives me an idea of like where can I expect to try to lead them during broadcast. And ideally, I wanna learn a little bit more about them. So what character do they play? So if I know their characters on screen, I can step back and maybe let them apply some knowledge. Because we all know Tekken's a absolutely massive and difficult game, and it's difficult to remember everything about every character. But if my co-commentator's characters on screen, then I can take a step back and let them shine, because that's going to be their area of expertise, right?
Yeah.
So stuff like that. That helps a lot. Different people will have different approaches to it. I know people try to be very inclusive about commentary and say commentary's for everyone, anyone can do it. That is true. Anybody could do commentary. Not everybody can do it well, and it takes. I think everybody can be trained into a capable commentator, but not everybody gets off the bat. Some people find it difficult to find the right space to like enter and start chatting. They might find it difficult to recognize like when you leave a pause for someone to enter and jump in. That's not like a natural thing, and it takes time to learn. I had to learn it, same as anybody else. The ability to segue, to ad read, to deal with situations. Sometimes, like a very common error that happens, for example, is somebody says something, let's say sus, on stream, right? They'll say something that's questionable, and they will start like apologizing or like digging themselves a deeper hole, which is not really something you want to do. Like majority of the time, for future reference, any commentators in the chat, what you want to do is you gloss over it, you move on. It didn't happen. Yeah. If there is reckoning to happen, it happens after the broadcast. You don't draw more attention to it. You just move on. That's whether you've made a full power your commentator. You usually try to move past it and don't draw attention to it. So there's stuff like that. Yes, there are hopeless situations. Sometimes I've commentated with people that would, every time I'd start speaking, they'd start speaking over me, and I would stop, right? Because that's what I'm trying to do as a commentator.
Yeah.
And then they would stop at the same time, and it's like, well, this is going to be a rough show. And sometimes when those things happen, and it doesn't happen as often nowadays, but it's always a danger when you're doing it with someone new. I just try to feel over energy and try to do still adjust as much as I can. But if it gets even more hopeless, then I just do my own thing. I've heard, I think Seda mentioned it in a commentary video once. Like sometimes the co-commentators thought that you just have to actually just ignore them and do your own thing.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough.
It sucks, but that's the case sometimes. It doesn't happen very often to me anymore, which is really a testament to how much a lot of the EU commentators have improved and how much of a joy they are to commentate with nowadays.
Yeah, for real.
But for people that are maybe newer, it's it can be tough. It can be tough, and it doesn't obviously detract from them as a person. Like it's just something to learn. And I'm happy to have those conversations with people. And I've done like I said, I've done VOD reviews for our local scene when we had commentary on. And we put out like a call, like, oh, if you want to try commentary, like we'll accommodate you. You get a slot at the polls, and then I'll give you a VOD review. I'll give you feedback of what you've done well and what you can improve on. And I thought that was a really valuable experience. Obviously, I'm not a TWD finals big shot or anything, but I've been around the block enough to know my stuff and try to help other people improve, which is a big thing. Like when there isn't a talent pipeline, you just got to make it yourself almost.
Real, man, real. Yeah, well, I mean, on that, because we've talked a little bit about, I guess, some of the more difficult spots with commentary. Who are one or some people from the EU scene where you've had maybe one event or maybe multiple events, maybe it's someone that you commentate with quite regularly, where you really feel like you've got enough of a connection in terms of your understanding of each other's tells and habits, or the energy is just there and you feel like you don't really need to focus on them because you know that they're pushing you up and you're pushing them up. Like, do you have like a recent example of this? Because I'm curious to know what that's like, what that feels like, especially when you're in front of a crowd, tensions are high, the games are good, everything's going crazy. I'd just love to hear something about that.
The one that comes to mind, and this would probably always be my first most of the time, is there's a commentator from Wales called Bebop. And he used to be a lay player in 7.
Yes.
And we've commentated first time in 2019. We did like an Elf Revolver, which was like I don't know, we had like 140 people or something. It was a pretty good event. It was Dojo. I think it was the first year of the Dojo system for Tekken. So
fair enough.
A lot of people turned. It was a great event. That's a whole other separate story of how that event came around and how much chaos it was to organize. But I learned more about him, and the Welsh accent is absolutely lovely, and he's got a great sense of humor. Really, really, really tough guy, and we became friends afterwards. And we like did cross advertising, so we would advertise Welsh events, they would advertise London events, and we'd try to cross pollinate the scenes and stuff.
That's sweet.
So we became good friends for that. And nowadays I know him well. He's been in my house multiple times. He's slept on my air mattresses and shit on New Year's. So I know him well enough as a person. So when I commentate with him, we can roll off each other. Like there's been commentary sessions when he's drunk and I'm like handling the ship and just letting him have his fun, just saying whatever he would say. Yeah. We've had the reverse when I'm drunk and in Bristol doing like sodium soda and something. We had way too many White Russians and played bowling, I think, that day, and I just got way too turned.
That sounds like
good time. That's a big one. In recent memory as well, I think Chicken Chakra, an Irish commentator, has been absolutely a joy to commentate with. I feel like it was a big break for him last year as well, so we both got UFA. And so originally I was meant to do the analysis desk for UFA, and then Spag couldn't turn up. So what happened is I got switched over to top 8 with Chicken Chakra. And we did a top 8 for that, and it was an incredible experience. And it was a big break for him doing a top 8, and it was a big break for me doing a top 8 at a high tier event.
That's amazing.
And it felt like we were both feeding off each other's energy. We both wanted to see the other one succeed, and we were both happy for each other. But at the same time, we wanted to push each other higher. So yeah, but we had agreements in place before the commentary. So he's a big fan of AK, and we said like, oh, if AK is about to win, I'll let you take the lead. You can have the big moment. I'll back off and you announce his victory and make the most of that. And in my case, I had the same agreement with Tetsu, right? Because at the time I kept cursing Tetsu every time I was in commentary. Tetsu would lose.
Oh no!
It was so annoying. So that event, he managed to break the curse. He took out Cuddle Core and then took out someone else. I forgot. And I was popping off. I was tearing my voice up.
I can imagine. But that must have been a while back because I'm not used to seeing Tetsu lose anything. I just wanted to quickly interject. Local hero, and the man who reverse 5-0'd Chanel, Yagami, has just rated us with 77 viewers. Everyone who's just tuned in, welcome. This is the Swindler Podcast, and we've got an amazing guest today. This is PunLife, absolutely exceptional commentator from EU, and he was just giving us a quick rundown on some of his many adventures with Bebop and Chicken Chakra, and sorry to interject, but just thought I'd give the lads a quick update. I did want to actually ask about that, though. You mentioned having the chat prior to hopping on the mic, saying, hey, what players do you value? What storylines do you like? And then I'll let you take the lead on those ones, and then vice versa. I presume now that you're largely doing commentary with more experienced commentators, this is a conversation that you'd be having a little bit more frequently. I'd also imagine that's something that's pretty important to try and establish before you get on the mic.
Yeah, I mean, it's always having good having a chat about. So it kind of depends who you're commentating with, right? So you mentioned like a lot of people I get to work with nowadays are more experienced, and even if I haven't worked with them before, I can rely on their expertise and their experience to be something that can guide our commentary. So we can have a chat beforehand, if I've seen them before, then I roughly know what kind of their style is, but I'll still have a chat like, what would you like me to fit in this commentary? Is there anything you want to focus on? So with Chicken Chakra, because I think UFA was I don't think it was his first TWT, because I think he did only the best before as well. But I wanted to make him as comfortable as possible. So I asked a lot of questions like, what would you like to focus on? Like, is there a skill or an area of your commentary you really want to show here? And I'll fit around that. I feel like I'm pretty flexible in my ability to yap. Whether it's play-by-play or analysis, I can switch around. I'm not necessarily the best at all disciplines by no means. There's plenty of things I can improve, but I can try to fit around, and obviously it'll be beneficial to my style of commentary and my ability to try those things and flip around and try to fit around my co-partner, co-commentator.
Yeah.
So that was the conversation we would be having, and then like I mentioned earlier, like, what players do you want to, and what players do you want to focus on? Is there a character you want to like showcase your knowledge on if they come up? So stuff like that. Just trying to prepare myself and have an idea of what to expect from my co-commentator, because it makes it easier, and then it gives you like an expectation of what to expect, and that makes it a lot easier to work with, because like, okay, so my commentator is going to focus on play-by-play. That means I can give him most of the time during the round and just jump in when there is spaces, which is still obviously like, I'm not just going to let a monologue, because you run over eventually. It gets difficult.
For real.
Yeah, it's like a planning phase, right? It definitely helps to have an expectation of what we're going to do and what they would like to achieve before you get into the entire thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I actually had a topic I wanted to transition into, but just on that, and I think this might be a nice segue. I already mentioned earlier that I got into fighting games through Super Smash Bros. Melee. It was a game that I loved playing as a kid, and I found the flexibility of the movement, the individual player expression. It was something that's so visual. Anyone who's watched Melee for any amount of time, you can watch two people play the exact same character in completely different ways, and even as a layman who doesn't know what's going on, it's identifiable, which I think is really exciting. And from that scene, and something that kind of gave me a deeper appreciation for the FGC as a concept was this commentary duo who many of you may have heard of, Scar and Toph. And I think that Scar and Toph really encapsulated this idea of your analytical man and then your hype man. And both commentators were absolutely capable of taking it in both directions, but Toph was always like the analytical backbone, and Scar was the guy who would lead the big moments. I guess my question to you, and I've got my opinion on it, but when you look at yourself as a commentator, what are the things that you believe that you excel at? And if you could categorize yourself in a specific way, if that's even something that you'd believe to do, how would you describe the way that you commentate?
So I think what I've achieved in the last few years is being a capable jack of all trades, which is not necessarily something I was aiming at, but I always look at myself trying to like cover towards the more analysis standpoint. The thing I deeply believe is that majority of times, if you're a pro player or a high level player, you're probably not tuning in for the commentary. If you're a pro player or high level player, you probably know majority of the things that are happening on screen regardless. So the commentary there, the value of commentary to you is the entertainment.
Yes.
If you're an average layman, that maybe you play ranked, maybe you don't, whatever. Like, you're intermediate or below. The value of commentary there could be to inform or describe the things you are not seeing on screen. Like, why was the thing they've just done difficult or exciting? Like, I need to tell you why them dashing into each other has a purpose.
Yes.
And why it's exciting. Because it's like, you can tell it's hype because the audience is telling, because like there's, we're getting louder and stuff. So that will be the first tell, but there's also there are things behind that. That will help you understand what's happening on screen. Things that are not immediately visible. I like to try to incorporate both of those elements because, granted, no commentator will ever capture everyone. People hate Spag, people hate Rip, people hate Tasty Steve. I'm sure there are people that hate my commentary. I've seen comments occasionally, which is fine. That's okay. Like, I'm never going to be able to achieve, like a complete audience capture. That's just never going to happen. And some people just like hating, it's just is what it is.
Yeah.
But I like to try to keep the analytical side, especially between games, and talk through situations, talk through what happened, what's the approach going forward. If it's let's say a match earlier on pools, then maybe it's a player that's a bit newer, so we can't really talk about as much of the decision process, but we can talk about how they can improve and what can we adapt to in the next match. So there's still an informative aspect of it that can be delivered to the audience. But you can also just keep the idea of like, I'm going to keep it light. I'm going to keep it funny. I'm going to make puns, right? Like, you can't be called PunLife and then just not say random silly shit on the mic. So that's an aspect I lean to. So analysis with like the entertainment factor, and I like highlighting the player stories. And whenever I know like a story from behind the scenes, I like to bring it to the audience. I like to showcase these players, talk about their journey, because while obviously commentary is almost to some degree a showcase of my skills and what I've achieved, I want it to be almost like a giving back to the community. Like I wouldn't be in the spots I am in without the community that I was a part of, and the people that raised me up and recommended me and always picked me up and gave me words of affirmation and stuff over the years. So I want to give back to them. If they're on commentary, then I want to talk about their journey. I want to tell the audience why they're cool, what they've been doing, what they've achieved, what's unique about their style, etc. I want to sell the players on screen. It's almost like I treat it like a story, right? Every set is a story. There's a beginning, there's like a conflict phase, and there's the end. And when you treat it that way, it feels a lot easier to figure out where your energy is meant to be going. Because you can have a set that's exciting from the get-go, right? Like if it's JDCR versus Knee, we're having a run back of Rev Major, it's going to be sick, right? Tekken 8 Season 2, they fixed all these things, everyone's super excited about the game, and the set starts with a lot of energy, but there will be sets that don't have that energy, and you want to build it up over time. So I think that's a good way to approach that kind of thing, and that's what I try to facilitate in my style.
Yeah, and it's super evident in the way that you commentate, but then also as you've been mentioning, like that trial by fire I brought up earlier, where you were commentating tons of different online events, local, and really getting into the groove of commentary. I do feel like, and we've got Shani in the chat actually. Shani is a terrific example of this. Someone who has run countless tournaments here in Oceania, has played in them, has commentated them. Also has a really good bridging of the analytical, but then the ability to get hype when it's needed, to bring out the storylines. Everyone that I've met who does commentary seems to have this level of gratitude that I wish was more commonplace in the general fighting game community. And it makes sense why it exists, because it's like if you're spending time where you could be working another job or playing a different game or hanging out with friends and loved ones, and you're going to events repeatedly where there might only be 6 people, or it's like some online ranked battle, and it's in a fighting game community where there already isn't the same prestige and the same monetary consistency as you're going to find in like Counter-Strike or Dota 2 or something. Irrespective of how good you perform on a given day, it has to be evident that there's a great deal of gratitude and giving back to the community in that. That's part of the reason why we were so excited to bring you on. One thing that we want to try and pivot to now, though, is you've actually got more than just a reputation for your commentary. You've also got a reputation for your statistical analysis outside of the game, in terms of analyzing tournaments, creating these incredible stat infographics, showcasing who's winning, who's meta, who's losing, who is potentially seeing an upswing, all of this kind of jazz. And for people like myself, who are neither the highest echelon of competition, nor, terribly bad at the game, but sitting somewhere in the middle, really taking some of these opinions to heart when I see a tier list from Lee Mishima on Twitter and I start fuming. I guess what I want to ask is, how did you get into that aspect of it? Is this just something that you yourself are really, really fascinated by? And if you could tell us a little bit about what you do on Twitter and online in terms of your statistical posts.
I'll put it in the chat as well here for people who've never seen them. They're really amazing. I'll
chuck it up on the screen.
Yeah, and one for EU Cup 3 LCQ and finals from earlier, a few months before, I guess. They're really, really nice. I'm really impressed.
Yeah, I'll chuck a few of these on the screen. But yeah, go for it.
I'm a data analyst myself, so I do dashboards at work. So I fully appreciate whatever you're doing. It's great, yeah.
So, much like the commentary, this was an accident. There's a running gag, I think. There's a running pattern there. So I'm a software developer by trade, right? I've been into computers and computer science for like years. Like I think I'm a secondary school here, right? So I guess it's like high school or whatever. But basically, since I was like 12, I was like, I want to do something with computers. Like my dad instilled like love for technology and stuff into me when I was younger. So I have a background in that, and I've been in the industry for a few years. And what I've noticed when I was TOing, right? I was like, well, I don't know, for those that might be in the chat that have done tournament streams and stuff like that before, there's broadcast controllers out there. So like, you have like name bars and stuff and you want to change the names, like stream control, etc. And I've worked with a few. And at the time, they were all ass. Like they've been around for a while and some of them were better. But there's so many times where I'm like trying to run a stream and there's like, this is not working or that's not working, and trying to like work out why it's not working was a pain in the ass, and there's like no error logs or anything. It's just shit. Sorry to be blunt. So I thought, well, what could I do? I think this is around COVID era. I was getting more confident with coding. I think I've just finished my first year of my like graduate job. And I figured, well, I'm gonna see if I can do something better. I know StarGG has an API. Why not harness the API and start showcasing things on screen? So we came up with the idea of like fight cards and stuff, much like UFC or like other combat sports, where you have like two fighters before the game, you show off their stats. So that's how my software called Punduction, which very clever, made production and pun. Right there.
Amazing.
So yeah, so Punduction came around, and it kind of rolls with the tongue surprisingly well, actually. So that came around, and I had a few different versions, and I was using East London Fighters since I had to run tournaments anyway. I thought, well, this is a good way to test this in live. Like, when I'm working with it, it performs fine, but when I give it to other streamers within our community, how will it work? Will it be convenient? Will there be issues? And obviously take the feedback on board and go back to the drawing board and fix things up and make UIs and stuff. And I'll see if I can find some screenshots of it. But that came around, and that worked fine. And I feel like that's a thing that we could like showcase a lot. There was a collaboration we had with NYC Tekken during COVID, where they actually before Furby went off the deep end.
Rest in peace.
He was actually streaming that tournament. So this is back in the day, because obviously he's been a bit loony recently. And they used that, and it was really cool because we had like a military theme to it, and it was like collaboration between the two scenes, and that was really cool. And then eventually, I was thinking about it, like, what else is FGC missing? Like, what am I missing on a production broadcast that I see on esports broadcasts or sports broadcasts? I was like, well, there's no stats. Like, there's nothing. Like, I want to know more about these players. Like, how are they performing?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, I know Knee and the big dogs. Like, I've been doing commentary, so like, I know about them. But the easy way to illustrate to an audience that someone is dominating is to show them hard evidence of it.
Yeah.
And numbers are a surprisingly good way to do that. So, since I now have the ability to pull data in real time, what if I pull data and like pull just a shit ton of data and just save all of it, just batch it effectively, and that's how the next stage of production, or as I call it now, panelize, came around. So as you can tell, with the running theme, I try to keep the brand consistent.
I respect it.
So that happened, and I started doing stuff, and I did the TWT one. I think it was 2022 was the first one, and I did 2023.
Yes.
And then I actually thought, well, ICFC like championship was coming up, and it was Richie, Shadow, and Al, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So three of them got flown out to US to play in the championship, and I thought, well, since ICFC is coming to a close, and I know we're reaching the end of Tekken 7 era, how about I do some data for it, right? I was going to release it anyway, but I reached out to Tenno. I already worked with them on ICFC at that point, so obviously it was a lot easier to just reach out. I thought, well, I'm doing data stuff, and I'm already known for doing some of the data stuff. Would you guys want to use this in broadcast? Like, free of charge, like, I just want to get my data out there. It hopefully helps you enhance the broadcast, and, it looks good on my resume. And they agreed, and they liked it.
That's amazing.
It was a cool thing to add to the broadcast. Yeah, it's a little bit of a layer of data, and it's a cool thing to like for commentators to talk through as well. Sometimes you want to fill the air, and having those things on screen just makes it a bit easier.
Yeah,
from that perspective.
This is I'm kind of looping back around to commentary with this, but it's something that I've always dreamed of, and something I was very excited about when the Melee community kind of figured this out. You might have heard of it, but Melee basically, they've got this guy in the scene called Fizzy, who's an absolute wonderkind when it comes to anything Melee related in the back end. And he created Slippy, which some of you in the chat may know. Slippy is basically ranked for Melee. You can boot up Melee on an emulator if you have ripped a legal copy of the game. Nintendo, don't sue me. And then you can download this mod, and it basically converts Melee into a rollback implemented matchmaking game with incredible load times, incredible match speed, and a few other things that the guy actually worked on was the ability to, and I don't know much about programming. I think API is the correct term, but I could be wrong. Basically the ability to use some kind of API or something to pull data from the game in real time. And then other people from the scene found ways to implement this into softwares like OBS, which is used for streaming. And so there have been a number of Melee broadcasts where as soon as a match ends, we immediately get statistics about the match that just happened. So it'll be stuff like who had the most openers in a match, which is just who either started a combo or put their opponent in a disadvantageous state by hitting them in neutral the most times. And it'll have average combo percentages. So how much damage was a player doing on average with a combo average conversions. How often were they converting a combo into a kill? For those who don't know Smash Bros. Super well, it doesn't have the same kind of combo system as a game like Tekken, where you get your down forward 2 launcher and then you do 65 to 75 damage out in the open, and that's guaranteed, that's flat, unchanging, that's how it works. In Smash, every character's got different weights, different gravity. Certain combos will work at certain percentages. Certain combos won't. So having these statistics is a really good way to demystify what can be a surprisingly unintuitive system beyond just the fact that, oh, if I hit my opponent more, they go further away. And I've been wanting something like that for Tekken so badly, because being able to get a stat sheet as soon as Steve and Rip finish commentating a match in top 8 at some super major, that tells you exactly how many times low-high hit a counter hit Steve back 1 on someone's noggin. That'd be awesome. And it, as you were mentioning, it gives you more things to talk about. The fact that you're already proactive with statistical analysis or going in depth on players' histories and finding storylines about the scene is already a massive boon for you. But having the ability to integrate that in real time, that would be something that would be really exciting for me. And one question that I actually had, and this is why I said I was looping back to commentary a little bit, was what are your thoughts about, and I know that you're deeply embedded in the FGC specifically, but I would imagine you've watched Dota tournaments, or you've watched Counter-Strike tournaments. I myself love watching Counter-Strike.
Yeah, of course.
A lot of the larger esports, they've got a much larger time capacity with their events. So you'll have a match play out, and then there might be a dedicated analyst desk section where a bunch of separate mics are talking about what happened in that match, what the strategies were, what the storylines are, and then it transitions back over to the main commentators who will then talk about the game as it's playing out. What are your thoughts on the pace, I guess, of FGC commentary? And do you have any, I suppose, like hopes or dreams about a PunLife future where you can get the exact kind of event structure that you want that would better benefit the kind of commentary that you do, I suppose?
So very good question, actually. Forced me to think a lot. So yes, obviously every other game takes a lot longer to play out, and usually also means there's a lot more setup time in between. You know, when you have 5 players on each side, you know, you got to check the PCs, make sure they're all ready and waiting, and they'll usually bring their own gear and whatnot to play with. So there's a lot more setup time that you have to accommodate within the production for that reason, which is usually why the analyst desk is a nice thing, because you have a segment to burn through time, but you still end up getting the classic, commentator, stop talking, put the game on type shit, right?
True.
Which is a staple even in esports. Because that's definitely how it works. So I think usually because segments like that are really good when you know you're gonna have some time to burn.
Yeah.
Which works well, perhaps in more kind of like invitational style, like closed tournaments where, you know, like you know how many players you're gonna have, and you have to set everything up in between the matches and stuff, and you just use that time segment to analyze in between. Like we played the Ukrainian tournament before, or the E-League one. I know they had the analysis segments as well in good old days of Tekken 7. So for tournaments like that, I think it makes perfect sense. For open bracket tournaments, it's a lot more difficult because you don't know how much downtime you're going to have, and sometimes you have surprise downtime. So your analysis segments effectively become kind of spontaneous. Like, oh, you know, we're between games, the PS5 overheated, so we have to change it. Fill for the next 5 minutes. So then I'll treat that as an analysis segment. Or talk about the tour, or analyze something, not necessarily just the game that just happened, but also like further. Maybe season 2 just came out, or like a patch just came out, so we can talk about a patch, the changes, the meta, etc. You always have some topics for that there and stuff.
Yeah.
Or at least I always do. I always have like at least a few things listed that I can just bounce to immediately without having to think about it too much. What you can do, and what I actually really liked, is at UFA this last year, there was an analysis desk, and it's a concept we're trying to get into more. They had it constantly for Street Fighter, so I think Rinch was on it the entire time doing his magic. Obviously, another highly skilled, extremely technical commentator, so having him be able to talk for a lot of these plays and stuff was super valuable to the audience. But we had it for Tekken for top 8, and it was Brownman and Nibs actually doing the analysis desk.
Wow.
Which had some growing pains. I know Brownman's coat was conducting like the actual screen, so he would accidentally touch it with his coat, and it would like skip the video, which must have been so infuriating. But bless him, he did a really good job of working that still. So I think segments like that are cool and valuable, and you can talk through things, but it's hard to set up in the FGC to get it done right. I think for top 8s, there's definitely room for it, but if you think about, like you mentioned, the short time of how long the match lasts, you have the duration of the match and maybe just a tiny bit more to figure out what you want to talk about, cut the clip, get that ready, and have it available for the analysts to go through.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Yep. Yep.
And I feel in Tekken, there's not that many commentators that focus on the pure analysis because of how large the game is and how much stuff goes into it. And to some degree, it's difficult as well, because sometimes you'd be like, oh yeah, right here, Olsan was thinking about this, and this. And then you go up, like, as commentators, sometimes we'll go up to Olsan or whoever afterwards and just ask him about it. And you're like, oh yeah, I just pressed it because it felt right. And it's like, come on, man. Like, I spent the last 3 minutes trying to, like, explain why this is a good decision, and he told me you just felt like it.
Yeah.
But that's also, the part of joy and of instinct and how that works when finding him. So, yeah, a little bit of a long-winded answer, but yeah, I think there's a time and place for it, but it's hard to fit into a broadcast, especially on like an open bracket.
Yeah, well, I mean, like what you've elucidated throughout this whole thing, though, is like part of the joy of it is your ability to demystify what's going on for people who might not necessarily also be playing at a super high level. And obviously you're going to have moments due to your experience as a player as well, where you're going to be able to make a call that is spot on the money, that whoever it is that's making that play in the moment is in 100% alignment with whatever you've said. And that's going to happen more often if you're commentating with people you're comfortable with, other people who are more experienced in the scene. Because what you just mentioned there, I remember watching an interview from Ulsan for Equinox a few years ago, and he was talking about why he played Kazumi, and he was basically saying, oh yeah, because I would go to the arcade and I could beat everyone in Korea with just 1-1-2. And it's like, there's layers to it. It's not just pressing the funny 1-1-2 button, but like that, you can take stock and take pride in the fact that you're actively demystifying the game. For people like me who used to watch European tournaments during COVID religiously, I probably watched every single 10-0 broadcast from all 3 regions during COVID. I was addicted to them. And yeah, the work that you're doing is super valuable, and it's appreciated. Yeah, Hangman, did you have anything that you wanted to touch on?
Yes, actually, I do. And this is my one of the first things I've heard about you, and I've liked you ever since. I've had a chat with Zach, Lucky Chloe Azucena player, from, from a long time ago. And really, this is probably the first time I've really heard about you. You were also an event organizer, right? And you helped with the seating and the brackets and stuff like that, right? And I, so here in Australia, I've done some bracket running myself, actually, for the online Tekken event. Remember, during COVID, each region had their own online Tekken thing, and then the winner of that becomes the champion for their region. There's the regionals and then the final championship, something like that, right? I did the bracket running for one of them. And at the time, people were telling me I was putting too much effort because I was seeding down to every single person. And apparently that wasn't a commonplace thing. But then I heard later that you also seeded down to the very last person. Was that right?
So, somewhat. There is a couple of years ago, or almost a couple of years ago now, we had this event. I sent you a link for that. So this was the final event we've ever done for ELF before we ceased activity. It's called the Final Fight, which kind of works for the final event, I guess. And since this was like the final event, I wanted to make as good as possible. Like I put I can't remember how many times I've reseeded and seeded, and So I'll do the initial tier of seeding. So actually, Chop is in the chat. Chop was one of the people I would talk to. Be like, okay, what do you think of a seeding? So anyone you would move, and then I'll adjust for regionals and stuff. Majority of time, I wouldn't advise seeding down to last person, because I think so. Generally, the way I treat seeding is the things that matter the most is that you don't run into people you play regularly. So if you're traveling over especially if you're going international, right? You traveled all the way from Australia to Europe, and now you got to play one of your boys in bracket, like round 2, round 1. That is dog shit.
Yeah.
That is always the focus when I try to seed. That's always the focus, making sure the regional matchups are a bit more spread out and don't happen early on. At least it's hard to say what happens once we leave pools, etc. Like that's difficult to account for. But early on, you can spread people out. The other aspect of it that I try to work towards is seeding kind of works in groups for me. So the first group is people that get buys. And that's the most important one because obviously they will have a leg up. So you don't need... The majority of the care has to be placed in whoever gets that buy. And after that, it's a bit easier to balance out. As long as the bracket looks more or less balanced in terms of power, there isn't like a spot where someone just has like a free run, so to speak, then it's fine. So with Final Fight, I went a bit overboard because it was the last event, and I wanted to make sure everyone has a good experience, and the bracket is as balanced as possible. There's no regional things to consider. If someone's coming in late, then I can obviously facilitate that, and I had to also make sure our commentators were available at all times. So that was the big thing. I wouldn't recommend it to everyone, especially for bigger tournaments. Like this was 120-ish, I think, entrants we had for Tekken.
Looks like 130.
Oh, well, even more than, yeah. So it was... it works. It's doable. I wouldn't recommend it at all times. For smaller tournaments, when it's a local, like absolutely, you can go down to the last person because when you have 16 people or maybe even like up to 40 people, like I think that's perfectly doable. And especially if it's your local, right? You know everyone, you know roughly where the power level is and how it works. But the bigger you get, the harder it is to maintain. And as a TO, obviously you'll have other things to do. You got to get the broadcast ready. You got to think of the admin, registration, all kinds of things. So as long as the seeding is considering the sort of the higher echelon of players, the buys, and I guess the group after the buys, then you're mostly fine. Like you can probably seed 30 to 40%, and that will actually be fine. And you could randomize the rest of the season; it will probably be okay.
Yeah.
Especially with Tekken, even with 7, right? Like at an intermediate level. Tekken 8 aside, Tekken's always been a very volatile game. Like anybody can beat anybody at intermediate level, and that's part of the joy of watching intermediate level Tekken because they're just slapping each other. This shit is a cat fight. It's amazing. So I think seeding it kind of removes part of the fun to a degree. I kind of want to see what happens when like 2 people that are around the sort of like if you know how in Star GD you have like power levels, so it goes 10 to 1. I want to see both those people with 6s just batter each other out on stream.
Yeah.
Real.
Yeah, of course.
That said, on the occasion, some people know I've done this. Some people don't realize. I'm evil sometimes when I seed, especially when I seeded locals. And sometimes there are things I want to see. Like there are things I'll purposely set up in bracket because I want to see it happen.
That's devious.
One that comes to mind is there were 2 Lars players, and I put them in a Lars mirror.
That every Lars player deserves the Lars mirror.
And put it on stream. Lars mirror on stream, round 1. And I was like, you know what? I want to see this. I want to see what happens. And it was sick. It was a sick match to watch. But I don't know this. They might do now, but
Little Finger does it again from Wildo in the chat. Real, man. The little finger is strong and devious. Oh, that's legit, dude. That's funny as. Well, I did want to make a really frustratingly drastic pivot because we're running to the end of our time, and I have something I want to ask you. I up until today was under the impression that my boy PunLife was old mate OSSERVA gang, but it sounds like you've been doing a little bit of League gaming. What's going on there?
Okay. it's good that you pivoted with some time to spare because I'm gonna run here.
Let's go.
So okay, I've mentioned before earlier in the broadcast that I played Claudio because no one else played him in the scene.
Right.
And I dropped Hwarang because my brain was too small to handle it early on when I was starting on, right? Because I used to play Hwarang and Ana. As you can tell, very big brain picks. But I couldn't like handle all the stances and I couldn't handle the decision making when I was still new to the scene. So I thought, okay, well let me pick a character that's simpler and also pick a character that's not represented in my scene, so that way I can become the specialist in the scene and teach everyone else about it. So, there's a benefit to me and there's a benefit to the scene, and also it's something that becomes identifiable for my brand.
Yes.
So that's how Claudio came about. And then for those that have seen me play, and those who have been on the receiving end, wink wink, Waldo, I developed a style of key charging and setting up like these pressure situations with key charge, be on approach or on defense. So I've done it there's a clip of me doing it to Dabby at Golden Letters where I key charge him once, Landa running two, and then key charge him again, and then get rage arted. Which, funnily enough, it was avoidable, but it really weird situation. I've done it, TWT Finals LCQ in 2022. I key charged Chicken Maru and did a running two in his face as well.
Oh my god,
so shit like that.
Chicken Maru, Jesus, man.
It was fun. Brutal. It was great. I loved watching the reaction. Like I was watching like MYK or someone else, like just popping off when I'm like just
the Titan
when I was
Thor of EU in the flesh. That's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely,
man.
Absolutely. But with a worse character. But there's mix-ups for it. Like it was a style. I was like, no one's using this. I think this is a viable play. So I was doing stuff like that. So 7 goes through. Season 3 happens in 7. Where I believe it's season 3 where back one gets buffed, right? So back one goes from like -9 to -5. I think they changed the animation on knockdown slightly. And suddenly everyone starts using back one.
Yes.
Okay, so now all Claudio players start looking the same. Okay,
Right.
Kind of have to. Move is good. You start rinsing shit out. And things happen, and then forward 1+2 comes out, and again, move is busted, so you have to use it, right? Because it's a strong move. Like, why would you not use a strong move unless you want to lose? And I evidently enjoy losing sometimes. But that kind of philosophy continues into Tekken 8, right? So CNT comes around, and I play both CNT and CBT. And down back 1+2 exists.
Yeah.
And a bunch of like little fleur things. Like they removed the old unblockable. They removing down to 2 is whatever. Like I had an idea. I think what they try to do is they try to remove down to 2 and down back 1+2 unblockable to make it a bit more easier for beginners to deal with Claudio, or maybe remove like the sort of knowledge checky aspects of them, which is fair enough. Like whatever. But then they removed the O key he had as well from up forward 3+4. So it was O key that was perfectly avoidable. We just stay down on tech roll. So instead, they now give him a flip over. Fair enough. And the O key's technically not removed. It's removed in neutral. If you're near a wall, you can still lift up. But whatever. It's a lot. It's not really worth going for. But they remove a lot of these aspects of it, and they kind of make him even simpler. Even I don't want to say brain dead, but definitely simpler, and the game plan kind of like narrows you down into a certain path, right? There isn't really flexibility around playing the character.
Yeah.
So as you can tell, I'm not particularly pleased about that. But when you play a character for 5 to 6 years, it's the muscle memory, it's the experience, and it's the brand. Like you tie yourself to a character. Like I love Claudio. I love his design. I love how he looks. I love the silly lines. Bro says "Mamma Mia" when he does a back throw. It's sick. But it's difficult to kind of let go of it. And I spent majority of the first year of Tekken 8 forcing myself to play Claudio. And when you look at like my one Quavo or whatever, you notice I don't play much Claudio in ranked. I'll play him in tournaments, but I won't really play him outside of it. And I think a big part of it, and it took me a long time to realize it, is I'm not having fun in the character. Like I'm having fun from like the things I can do with a character and the way I play, and hard, like sort of hard replay style and stuff. But the character itself is not fun, and there isn't much enjoyment or like specialist aspects of it that I can really develop anymore. And the fun is gone. And when you think about it, well, I want to my kind of guiding philosophy once I realized this was playing Claudio on good days is fine because it's a good day and I'm in a good mood. It's whatever. But I want to be able to practice Tekken on a bad day when things are shit day at work. I just want to hop into lab or ranked or whatever and just play with a character that will lift my spirit. And Claudio was not doing that anymore for me. It was just not having the same energy. So let me shop around. I played other characters. I've played. I've picked up Steve and tried to play Steve. And had fun with that, but again, brain too small.
Don't give us too much credit, mate.
Yeah, maybe, maybe. Listen, so you guys are cooking some random shit on that character. Like, there's things I see from you, Bolo, Code Red, etc. It's crazy. Ball Rage as well.
Character.
Absolutely. But that's what makes them fun, right?
For sure.
So I had other characters, and someone mentioned Lee, and I was like, oh, I always dodge Lee because of execution, but I thought, well, I've played the game for long enough that maybe I can just, do whatever, and picked up Lee, and yeah, the character's fun. He's got sauce, and he's got good punishment. He's got lots of things that you can pull out that are still viable that can make you a bit more unique. I think your choice of punishment, your choice of approach, how you place the lows, etc. Like, there's a lot of flexibility of them, and there's a lot of flair that you can apply to them, which I think is really, really cool. You can you can look at the way Sagax and the chat or Silver or Flower or Super Kuma are playing, and there's like distinct differences between it. Whereas with Claudio, like, you could look at two different players, and it's going to be hard to distinguish who's who.
Well, that's
the big
quick interjection. Funnily enough, I watched every Tenno back in COVID. I mentioned that earlier. And so what that meant was watching a whole lot of Super Akuma kicking everyone's ass. And it was always fun when Sephi Black would periodically blow him up with just Savage 2. There's like this one clip where he literally does Savage 2 6 times in a row and takes the round. But Super Akuma, unironically, might be like top 3 viewing experiences from any EU player for me right now. I want to be able to play Lee. He's high up on the to-do list, and a big part of that is dudes like Flower, dudes like Super Akuma, and just the inherent fun factor of that character. Some of the shit you can do and the ways you can express yourself is crazy. So I can really see why you've taken to him.
Yeah, there's a definitely, like, the mechanical aspect of it feels good, right? Same as Steve, right? This is the big thing, like Masaji or Shiro in 7. Just the mechanical, like, joy of doing it. Just Masaji, just mashing the buttons, but like, I had it on triggers, right? So like, I would mash my triggers. That felt incredible. Yeah, like, it's just a rush of dopamine every time you do it. And with Lee landing just frames, even the just frames after a while don't become like, they're barely just frames for it, right? I'm not saying I can do Astral Rain consistently yet, but we're getting there slowly. But like, the other aspects, right? Like, I recently nailed the timing for back on 1+2.
Yeah.
And that feels good. I can land it in game now, and now that means my I-14 punish is cracked, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a definite mechanical, like, enjoyment to characters, more so than, like, some characters more so than others. Be it in, on Claudio, I enjoyed doing running 2s before, and now running 2 is easy.
Yeah.
So like, aspects of that are
I fully agree.
I mean, removed.
Like, taking Lee as an example, like, I haven't played him much, but I remember I screwed around with him in a bunch in 7, just to the point where I could do back 2 loops and combos. That was pretty much it. To this day, and any person who plays Lee does them in their sleep. It's not necessarily nearly as difficult as it's been mythologized to be by most. I think the difficulty comes in your ability to do a timing-oriented execution check under stress, which is why even the best tournament players will drop his back 2 loops in tournament. Is trying to do anything timing related when you're stressed out, it's difficult. You feel like you are physically involved in the motion. Same thing goes for Steve's Shiro combo back in Tekken 7. I think a big reason why so many people hopped off the character after that was removed wasn't just the fact that it did good damage and was a fucking cracked thing to have access to off of a counter hit down forward 2, but it was also the fact that doing that while standing 1 pickup, you feel like you're scooping. and it takes precision. It's like a precise scoop. It's like, fuck yeah, it feels good. And then you transition into the Gatling, and you're only doing 2 Gatlings, but those 2 Gatlings, you got to be a little machine gun warrior because you're hitting your 1+2 bind, and then you're pressing the 2 button. That feels really, really good. It's like all of these little components fitting together snugly. It's not just an ego thing. It's not just a matter of I want to be the execution guy. I'm a Kazumi player. That was my main in Tekken 7. I adore the fuck out of that character. She's not known as a Lee or a Brian or a Steve, right? But these small little motion inputs that they put in the combos that just perfectly sync up with the animation. I think Lee has some of the best in the series. His I-10 punish, it feels like it works exactly how a move that does that much damage should work. Like, there has to be an aspect of it that's like, hey, you're about to get skill checked for trying this, so good luck. But if you hit it, you're going to feel like a god. It's like, yeah, fuck yeah, dude. So I fully see why you've taken to Lee, because he's flashy as hell, and his back 2 loops feel like what a move that looks like that and functions the way it does should feel like. Like, the rhythm of it, it's perfect. I think it's a really, really underappreciated. And the fact you said, like, you wanted a character that when you're having a bad day, shit's rough. I had this same problem with Kazumi in Tekken 7. Probably not as dire as you've had it with Claudio, but sometimes you just hit that wall where you're in the lab or you're waiting for matches and you're doing the same combos over and over again. And you're like, man, there's not a whole lot extra here for me to actually work out or work through, I suppose.
The big aspect of it is, and I was trying to help a friend when I was like kind of trying to coin this approach, because I have a friend, Alice Noon, shout outs to her because she's great. She was having a character crisis in this game because she's a Julia player, right? Julia and Gigas, 2 very different characters, but we'll move past that. But obviously never ever characters back, and she moved to Zafina, and was kind of struggling to find the same joy in the game that she would in 7.
Yeah.
So I try to help her work out, like, we need to find, what do you find fun in this game? Do you find like the counting aspect fun? Do you like reading people? Do you like high execution stuff? Like, once you find that, it makes it a bit easier for you to work out what character you want to fit into and what you want to do in this game, and then find that fun and make it easier for you to continue playing, especially like I mentioned on the bad days. Which is eventually me telling her that led to me realizing I'm not having fun of the game, which is like how Claudio dropped. But a big aspect of that is just, like, different people find different things fun. Some people find winning fun, right? At which point they kind of shit out of luck because this game is really difficult to consistently win on. That's like an aspect that I think everyone needs to query themselves for sometimes. Like, is what aspect of this game is most fun to me? How can I focus on that aspect and give myself even more enjoyment out of the game? Be it,
real.
on a daily basis or just like overall outside of that.
Absolutely. I gotta find that equilibrium. I really, really love Steve in this game. Lee looks like he looks like so much fun. He looks like so much fun. And then you got Hangman playing King.
I will always love King. I picked King because I like pro wrestling. That was it. I have no idea what archetypes means in fighting games. It just, he does the Stone Cold, stunner. That's all I want.
I've seen you in the ranked waiting lobby, bro. Just doing down forward 2. No combo, just down forward 2. Just practicing the vibe.
Changed. I know. Whenever I hit down forward 2 on block on hit, the dopamine always rushes to my head.
It's Russian, dude. Well, we're probably gonna wrap things up here. PunLife, was there anything else that you wanted to go over? We've got a couple more minutes to go, but we're gonna start tweaking things out.
Nerf Jen, Nerf Nina, Nerf Yoshi.
Yes.
Don't buff Steve.
Real.
Don't buff King. Don't buff anyone, actually. Nerf everyone. That's
real. Real.
I'm feeling you.
Man for the people.
The Core Gaming video has done irreparable damage.
Oh my god!
I hope Gerard sleeps
exactly
with one
what
of
I
them.
mean.
Oh man, that video, dude. And at the time, I was just but a fledgling FGC member, just a hopeful. Watching that video, looking at the production value, just being like, "Fuck, dude, this is the future. We might have a shot. We might have a shot at being something. Us." The little plebeians in the FGC. And then look how the tables have turned, brother.
Yeah, we didn't realize what we had. But
We didn't
yeah,
realize
enough for
what we
everything.
had.
Do not bring wall bounce in season 2.
Oh my god.
I never want to see wall bounce
Dude,
again.
Julia's wall bounce. Holy
Oh my god.
shit, dude. God damn, Miguel wall bounce. Oh, those were times, man. People complain about T8
Devil
damage.
Jin?
Dude, Devil Jin was
Listen,
a nightmare.
The one thing I'm going to miss is like floating back 1 into back 3+4, like the backsway into wall bounce. Oh, bro, it feels so good when you do it. Someone just whiffs right in front of you, and it's like, well, eat shit, I guess.
Just like pressing your nerd button, pushing the glasses up. Like, yes, strategic play,
Yep.
strategic gaming. Let's go. Well, lads,
I knew you would press her.
I knew it. What else were you gonna do? I
understand it now.
I want to thank all of you so much for tuning in. As we close things out, I do need to bring this back up real quick. PunLife, please give us a reminder. Edinburgh, what's going on?
So once again, one of the most passionate scenes in UK is the Scottish scene, and they are organising the 4th edition of Edinburgh in the beautiful city of Edinburgh. So make sure you guys fly over, or take the bus, or whichever mode of transport you want to take. They are running a bunch of different games. I think there's like 7 games in total. So Street Fighter 6, Tekken 8, etc. All the other games you can see there. Turn up, support the scene. It's amazing. There's great food. It's a really cool city to go around. Will they take us around around the castle and other bits and pieces. So whether you're going as a tourist or as a fighting game player, it's going to be a great experience in both of those aspects. So yeah, turn up, support, and have fun, and tell others, tell your family, tell your friends.
You hear that, Australians?
You hear
Fly
that?
over. Come to Edinburgh.
Fly over. Do
Bring
it.
your sister. Bring
They-
your dog.
They
It'll be
may
worth it.
take our lives, but they'll never take our Tekken. It's
Exactly.
real as fuck. I'll be posting about it on Twitter as well. So
I'll be very
please
keen to see what
be
happens
sure to
anyway.
tune in. And for our fellow Australians, the Game Expo. People have been asking me if I signed up. I was peer pressured into it earlier by someone, so I have signed up. If you're not signed up for this event, Hangman, cough cough, be there or be square, okay? Or I'm gonna be staring at all of you with disdain for the next 6 or 7 months. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this podcast episode. PunLife, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Likewise.
And if the people in the chat before we leave can hit PunLife with a quick little happy birthday, because it was our man's birthday yesterday, that would be appreciated.
Happy birthday, sir.
We're gonna have another special guest next week. Some of you may have heard of him, maybe. His name is Chai. Local Australian hero, PunLife, if you didn't know. Chai is a ex Call of Duty content creator, streamer, who decided to transition over to Tekken in the last year, and now is kicking everyone's ass just immediately. Super charismatic dude.
Beat Rest, the Huarong player.
He beat Rest in tournament. Like, what?
Shit.
Dude's crazy. Dude's insane. So we're going to be having him on the podcast next week. He's going to be running over what it's like doing streaming to the capacity that he does it, doing commentary, the whole jazz. But PunLife, once again, thank you so much. This episode will be going live on YouTube. So I'll post that around as well so that you guys can share it around and listen to it in the privacy of your own kitchen while you do the dishes. But this has been the Swindler podcast. Once again, thank you so much, PunLife, and to
Thanks
the
for
next
having me.
one. Yeah, we'll see you around.
Keep doing this until we get Majin Obama on the podcast. See you, buddy.
Real as hell. Real as hell. All right, lads. Catch you all. Have a great night. We'll catch you around.